Welcome to New Realities. I'm Alan Steinfeld, and this program has been about the emerging consciousness, who we are becoming as human beings, as evolving human beings. And a person I've wanted to have on this program for a long time is Gregg Braden. He is an investigator, a researcher, and a consciousness explorer. And Gregg, it's so great that you're here because you're always finding new information to add to the human story. And I think where you're at now about moving into a future along a new track, a new potential for the human being is where I've last seen your work going. So do you want to talk about this new story and this? I think you also bring in this missing link almost that you're saying that there's this realm. So go ahead, jump in there.
Yeah, Alan, first of all, it's good to see you, and I'm honored to be on the program. It's been way too long. I am, as we mentioned off air, I'm coming to you from a studio just outside of Santa Fe, New Mexico. And the new work actually isn't so new at all, but the condition of our lives and of our world have brought this information front and center. We are living this time of extremes. The pandemic is certainly forcing a shift in the conversation. What I've found, Alan, there's a battle unfolding before our eyes right now, and it's happening in phases, some that are more apparent than others. We all know there's a battle for our thoughts. It's playing out in mainstream media. We're being conditioned and told what to think rather than being given the information to allow us to make our own choices. We know that. There's a battle for our beliefs. It's playing out in the academic world in terms of who are we? What is our origin? Where do we come from? What are our potentials and capabilities? Right. There's a battle for our bodies. What does it take to be healthy? What does it take to stay healthy? What does it take for a newborn child coming into this world to be considered a healthy being? But there's another battle. It's a silent battle. And these other things I've mentioned are the noise and the static that are the distractions and the diversions from an even deeper conversation. There's a battle for our very humanness that is playing out right now. Right. There is a thinking that has been in vogue since the 20th century regarding the human body, but the advent of technology in the time of COVID is now bringing that thinking very close to us in our daily lives. The thinking has been that the human being, specifically, and carbon-based life in general, are flawed forms of life, that we are weak, vulnerable, and that we need something outside of us to survive, to thrive, and to reach our greatest potential. And it's triggered a movement that is advancing very quickly in some societies to replace our natural biology with computer chips, wires, chemicals, and the consequences of that are my concern, and that's what I'd like to talk about today. So it's a long answer to a short question. I'm going to stop and just ask, does that make sense?
It not only makes sense, but it's something that's been disturbing me. People talk about AI, and AI is here to serve us. It is soulless. It has no consciousness of its own, and we need to know that we are the beings that are full of potential. So one more thing I want to say, I saw a film about the future and some of these things Elon Musk is doing, and they talked about putting a chip inside the human brain to create telepathic thought, non-local consciousness. I'm teaching remote viewing, and I'm seeing how people are already accessing their own greater intelligence to telepathically tune in and remote. Do I want a chip, or do I want to learn how to do this through my own innate consciousness? So go ahead.
Wow, you've just laid the ground for a very fertile conversation here.
Yeah.
So you touched on a lot of things there. So I'm just going to say, first of all, I am not anti-technology. I come from the world of high tech, Some of you know I was the first technical operations manager at Cisco Systems back in the 90s. I worked in the defense industry during the Cold War on the Star Wars SDI, Star Wars Defense Initiative. The only reason I say those things is because those careers have given me the insight into the world of technology. And I've seen the most advanced technology you can imagine with space-based lasers and radar systems and communications and memory. Mm-hmm. And the reason this is important, Alan, and how it ties into the statement you just made, is as complex as that external world of technology appears to be, I have never, to this day, seen any technology in the world around us that does not mimic what we already do in the cells of our bodies, except we do it better. Mm-hmm. We do it better. Mm-hmm. And this is where this whole conversation becomes very important, because what the science is showing is that when we begin to replace our natural biology with machines, so we replace neurons with computer chips, or replace chemicals, natural chemicals in the blood with artificial chemicals to achieve one particular goal, mm-hmm. what happens is our natural abilities, this is really important, our natural abilities begin to atrophy. Right. And we all know this because we use the phrase often, use it or lose it. This is true when it comes to neurons. It's true when it comes to human reproduction. There are Asian societies right now that are adapting these technologies very quickly, and they're immediately seeing the consequence. The female fertility rate is dropping. The male sperm rate is dropping. The birth counts are now lower. Or the birth count is lower than the mortality rate. People are dying faster than they're being born. Mm-hmm. And these are like the canaries in the coal mine of what the consequences are. The technology is right, wrong, good, or bad. It's how we apply it in our lives. And we have been conditioned, and we're conditioning our young people to believe that we are weak and vulnerable, and our only path to survival is to adapt the technologies. Now, the one you're talking about is one that I've used for 3 years now, mm-hmm. in our live events as an example. Mm-hmm. Elon Musk, I just want to back up. I'm not anti-Elon Musk. He is young, mm-hmm. he is wealthy, he is powerful, he is innovative, he has visions that are pushing the boundaries of everything that we believe to be possible and true. And I don't fault him for that. I saw a recent interview, and it was very telling, where he spoke about AI specifically. And what he said, Alan, this is really interesting. He said it's the first time in his world of technology that he's been afraid for our future. And here's what he said. He says, my companies have to push those boundaries. They've got to find how far we can go with this. He says, because if we stop, I will lose my market share and we'll lose our competitive edge in the business. But he said, I'm pleading. This is one place where we don't need to regulate my company per se. We need to regulate the entire industry. He said, please reel in this artificial intelligent technology. And he looked at the camera and he said, because I'm afraid of where it's leading. So he says they've got to keep going, but he recognizes the potential downside, and he's saying, he's pleading for the powers that be to regulate this and to reel it in. Mm-hmm. And that is only one example. Now, what you were talking about is his company. It's called Neuralink. Right. And it exists now. It is a physical computer chip that the ports on the chip interface with the dendrites of the neuron, and they allow the user to communicate directly with the computer without cables or wires or a keyboard. The thinking is that we can learn quickly. We can download information quickly from a program, just like Neo did in the movie The Matrix. Right. What we often are not told, however, is that we have a class of neurons in our neocortex that allow us to do just that. They mimic what these chips are doing. They're called Cubelli neurons. We only discovered them in 2004. Cubelli neurons don't know the difference between watching something on a screen and having the experience in the body. And what that means is when those cubelli, just a perfect example, when a cubelli neuron sees the healing of an individual, whether it's on a screen or think about this, whether it's on a screen of the computer or the screen of your mind. Mm-hmm. What you envision, those cubelli neurons, when they are given the proper environment, those cubelli neurons don't know the difference. So what they do is they say, oh, I'm going to channel a cubelli neuron. The cubelli neuron says, oh, there's a healing in progress. We better get with the program. We better start sending the signals to the body to create the chemistry to support what it is that we're seeing. And so those cubelli neurons will begin to tell the body to kick that regeneration, the rejuvenation, the healing into high gear, but they can also be used for learning. Mm-hmm. And this is only one example. We begin to replace or to insert and place computer chips into the part of the brain where those cubelli neurons reside. Pretty soon, the body says, oh, well, I guess you don't need me anymore in one lifetime. But then the next lifetime, when we produce our offspring, the body says, you know, these are vestiges of something that we used to, but we don't need them anymore. And we begin to lose, Alan, the very essence of what it is that makes us human. And this is why I say our humanness is on the line, because this isn't going to drag out for decades. The technology is moving so quickly, and the pandemic is now being used as leverage to catapult this use of this merging of technology and biology quicker than we ever would have imagined just over the next few years. So we've got this window of time to, and I'm not saying it's right, wrong, good, or bad. Here's what I'm saying, Alan. How much of our humanness are we willing to give away to the technology? And I believe we cannot answer that question until we know who we are. That's the new human story. The new human story is revealing the discoveries that answer the question. So
no, I love this. All those ideas and those, you some cubelli neurons. Is that what you're...
C-U-B-E-L-L-I, cubelli.
I think they're used much more than just healing. They're used for mimicking human action. If you want to learn how to ski, you look at an expert skier and your body knows how to mimic those actions that even surpass the conscious mind. It's just a mimicking technique. I think, you know, actually they found them in 4 hours after a child's born. If the mother smiles at the baby will reflectively smile back. And so that's some of the work Bruce Lipton, of course, does, where he says, you know, if your mother's not smiling, if she's depressed, you're going to mimic that attitude and you're going to just identify that as self. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But getting back to the new human, you're saying, and it's scary. I'm not against technology either. I mean, cell phones, computers have made our lives easier. It's made us interconnected, but we don't want to cross that line and not only depleting the human potential, we don't even know yet what that human potential is. Exactly. And that's sort of the next level of the conversation I want to talk to you about. And after we kind of go through this level, who are we really? What are we capable of that we have yet to access? Because this is really what makes us human. The potential.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Very seldom do we hear anything in the mainstream about supporting the robust immune response that we have had as a species for over 200,000 years. The question is, do we love ourselves enough to live our lives in a way that allows our bodies to be at their very best and do what they know and they have the intelligence to do? Do we love ourselves enough to adopt that? We're not being told that with a simple change in lifestyle and modifications in diet and moving our bodies daily in very conscious ways and breathing just a little differently than we would typically, breathing deep, complete breaths. We're not taught that those are epigenetic factors that directly impact our immune response.
This, what you're naming or discussing, is the end result of a culture that supports fast foods, Coca-Cola, sugar on every single table in every restaurant. So it's just the outgrowth of something that
Sure.
we've already given our power away to the mass market. So
Alec, but you're right, and it goes even deeper than that. You mentioned how the internet and cell phones have given us the access to deeper connection.
absolutely.
Very, very interesting studies have been done. We are connected on a deeper level, but at the same time, the studies show that humans have never been more alone, have never felt more alone, because they are losing the capacity for intimate human relationships, including conversation, including young people, the emotional skills to deal with problems with their peers, because it's all being done on apps and that where you need no emotional response. So are we more connected? Absolutely. Are we happier? Are we closer? Do we feel more more loved? And what these studies are showing is we've never been more alone, and that's the great irony. Isn't that an amazing irony of the technology? As
Well,
first generation, this has happened.
you know what I like about you is that you can name the problems, really, but also you're intelligent enough and you've done enough research to start to formulate solutions. And this is where I think the conversation is really, because everyone knows there's a crisis at hand, and it's with the planet, with each other, with ourselves, and we need a way out of it. And the aliens, whether they're out there or not, are not going to save us from the mess we've created.
Probably not. So, Alan, I'm going to cut right to the chase because
Okay.
I know I want to honor our time
Right.
and I want to honor our community. And I just want to look our community in the eye and thank you all for your love and support, and for just for being the very best version of yourself that you can be in this unprecedented time that none of us, we knew the world was changing. I don't think anybody could have seen that it was going to change in precisely the way that it did. But here's what's up for us right now.
Wait, before you say that, I just want to
Sure.
go. I just want to say,
All right.
in biology, there was that time when there were only oxygen was a poisonous gas, and it looked like life was at its extinction because there was too much oxygen out there. And suddenly the field changed and there were oxygen breathing beings. So maybe we're down at that place where it's the crisis that will provoke change.
That's a beautiful segue into to where the focus of my work is right now. We can play whack-a-mole and go after each individual wrong that we see in the world today. And a lot of people are doing that, and I think they're well intentioned, and it brings visibility to the conversation. However, what we typically find is if we want to be effective, it's not effective to impose a new way of thinking on an existing system of values and beliefs.
Right.
That's where the pushback comes. So what I think is up for us, Alan, there's a new world emerging. It's not here yet. And we don't know. We cannot know precisely what that world is going to look like. And some people are trying to force and mold that world. We can't go back to the world that we left in 2019 and early 20 because that world is gone.
Right.
So all we can do, and this is where I think our power is right now, we can't determine what the new world will look like, but here's what we can do. We can choose the human values that we cherish for ourselves, for our families, for our children, for our species. And we can make those values the foundation of every choice, every law, every policy that we embrace and that we enact. And if we with certainty allow our fundamental values, whatever those are, things like life itself, like creativity, like imagination, like community. And there are so many of these. If we allow them to be the foundation of every choice and policy that we make moving forward, I think we can't go wrong. If we put those values on the back burner as they have been for the last 150 years, in exchange for other values of economy and growth of companies, corporations, and things like that, we're going to end up with the same world that we've just come from, except it's going to be a world with the technology to enforce to an even greater degree the things we don't want. So our job now, what is it about our humanness that we cherish? And if you go to our website, we have projects where we are engaging the community to join us in this conversation. Our ELs, we just had a meeting yesterday with ELs, Evolutionary Leadership Organization, with this. And there are a number of different ways, but I think in our own everyday lives, I think our job is to ask ourselves, what value do I cherish to such a degree that that I'm not willing to compromise that value? And then as we emerge into this new society, post-COVID society, I think we're going to have a yardstick by which to gauge our choices. And I think this is really important because the technology will render those values impotent. The technology and the rate that it's being developed and implemented in the human body, the goal, the stated goal in the technical papers that I've read, they believe that intimate human relationships are a messy diversion, distraction, a waste of time that we can do better with AI. We don't need to have disagreements and arguments and fights. They say it's going to end wars. We don't need to have birth defects, and we don't need to have the diversity of life any longer because in the womb, we can now edit the genes of a fetus to become whatever it is, that fast twitch muscles for athletics or slow twitch or higher intellect, different colors, eyes, skin, hair, all of those things. They say, why take the chance on the genetic roulette wheel when we can with certainty engineer these? We tried this in the 20th century, Alan. Early in the 20th century, we didn't have the technology and it failed, and it's coming back once again under a new name. And I think it's not to judge, it's to discern that these things are there. We're not judging them because that's where we lose our power. But we discern that these are out there, and then we choose, just like Buckminster Fuller said. He said it so beautifully. He said, you'll never change the world by fighting what you don't want. He says, if you want to change the world, find a new way to do things, a new and a better way, and people will follow the new way, and the old way goes away. You don't have to make it collapse. It collapses under the weight of its own falseness.
But we are in a community of like-minded people. There are corporate, I would say, greed mongers that aren't interested in human values. They're interested, like you said, making money. And they actually have a lot of the power. Of course, we have the power if we take, but these are the people we have to reach. We already all want these human values, but we're in a world that has built its foundations, and even the structures that we live by are in the hands of corporate. I mean, we all still fill up our cars with gasoline, that when there's, so yeah, it's great, everything you're saying, and it's very idealistic, but really, if we're going to make a real difference, how do we reach those people, Gregg?
Well, it's not idealistic because now the science is on our side. There is an ideal that underlies these things, but the science is on our side. This demonstrates the power of education because those corporations and the economy that is buckling and collapsing under the weight of its own insustainability right now, they are the result of a thinking that was implemented in the mid 1800s, 1859, under the premise of the science of Charles Darwin. Mm-hmm. Now, when I say this to a group of young people, I mean, many of them are millennials or younger.
Right.
And they say, okay, Greg, we got it. Maybe Darwin was wrong, but so what? That was 1859. This is 21st century. Who cares? It's a good question. And they're surprised at the answer. Because the answer is this: the foundation of the society that we live in today, the foundation of the economic system that we are all tied into today, the foundation of the corporate system that we are all subject to today, those foundations were created in the late 1800s and the early 1900s to reflect the thinking that was accepted during that time. That thinking we now know, was based on the false assumptions of an obsolete science.
Right.
There's a battle playing out in the classroom because academia wants to hang on to those false assumptions. All right. There's something called a standard model of the universe, a standard model of human emergence. And even though the data no longer supports that model, it's being taught as fact to our young people in public schools. Private schools don't have to.
So how do we then, I agree. It starts with education.
Yeah.
And that's going to change the structures all the ways up as these newly educated. But how do we get to the schools? Because they are run, for the most part, by the structures that have put them in place. So yeah, talk about that.
Well, there are different ways to do that. There are teachers within the school that are implementing this in bits and pieces, even though it's not officially allowed, and they come to me all the time asking me for support. Private schools are changing this. University professors are, people my age, I'm closer to 70 than I am to 60 right now. And my colleagues who have taught in academia for 40 years of their lives or more, they're telling me they don't want the fight. They don't want the battle. And what they're saying is, we're going to retire and we're going to let the younger professors figure this out. And the younger professors are open to the new ideas. So I think there is a new generation of young people who recognize that a lot of the thinking in the past simply doesn't work. So that's one. The education is changing. It just doesn't happen overnight. It's slow and gradual.
And do we have the time to wait?
This is the flip side. There are more of us having this conversation than there are the handful of people in positions of power. And that power only exists because we support the commerce, we support the economy that allows for those beliefs to exist. And I think there is a way. We want to make the transition with as little suffering as possible. I have colleagues right now, and you probably interviewed some of them. I'm not going to name them to honor them because they're my friends.
Right.
But what they say is, we've got to tear down and burn down the old system and start over. I personally, I believe that that's not true. I believe that's where the suffering comes from. I believe that's where the people that can afford it the most are hurt the greatest. What I believe is that the good news, Alan, we have the solutions to all the big problems already. We don't need to create the solutions. They already exist, and we've had most of them for a very long time. We have all the food we need to feed every mouth of every man, woman, and child on the face of the earth. Right now, it is not the lack of food that is the reason that our brothers and sisters are starving in parts of the world. It's because it is yet to become a priority in leadership. And when I say leadership, it doesn't have to be American or European. It's just a thinking. It's a thinking that says human life is a priority. My brothers and sisters are a priority. That does not exist. One example, we already have the technology to produce clean, green, sustainable electricity, zero fossil fuels, zero greenhouse gases, in a way that cannot be weaponized, in a way that cannot melt down like a Fukushima reactor. We have had it for over 60 years. If the powers that be were honest, and if they were serious about green, sustainable energy, we would have that right now, and there are movements to bring this forward. We already know how to build economies, this is important, based upon sharing and abundance rather than scarcity and competition. That's a
Mm-hmm.
very different way of thinking.
Yeah.
And COVID has triggered localized living. This is one of the first things that we can do. We're moving from centralized power to localized power.
Right.
And the powers that be want us to stay centralized. So when I
Yeah.
talk about local, I'm talking about local sources of energy, local sources of finance, local sources of economy, local sources of food. The more you can do locally, the less dependent you are on the regulation, the rules of those big central organizations. Digital currency
Mm.
is creating a revolution in the way that business and blockchain technology, because it cannot be regulated, it cannot be controlled, it's not centralized. And it means when we are using a digital currency, peer to peer, our money goes, or the value that we're placing on something goes to another person directly. It doesn't go to a middle person where it can be used for war in another
Mm-hmm.
country or for an economic sanction in another country. And that's important. So localized energy,
Mm-hmm.
um, there is no one size fits all. And that's why the Green New Deal is problematic in many respects. It can't be one size fits all, but we
Right.
do have the technologies available. The human body. Now we're going to get back to the human story.
Right.
Every organ in the human body is now documented with the ability to stop the damage, to repair damage that's already been done, to heal and reverse that damage. Even organs the tissue, spinal cord tissue, brain tissue, pancreatic tissue. The key is, and there is a catch, that the organ and the tissue must be given the correct environment.
Mm-hmm.
That environment can be, as we think, the world around us. It can be a nutritional environment. It can be nutritional supplements. But the most powerful environment is the emotional environment within the body. And I know this is what my brother Bruce talks
Right.
about. So it all requires us to step up and take responsibility. And that is a hard one for our society that's been taught not to do the research, not to do the reading, not to be responsible, but to rely on someone else. And I think that's the greatest shift that we're seeing right now, Alan.
Okay. So what is it going to take for us to stop filling our gas tank saying we want this and bring it on? I think these corporate forces, we talk about, yes, there's more of us than them, but they are the 1% versus the 99% that we.
Well, this is
So
where,
yeah.
Bruce Lipton says this beautifully, and I agree with him. He says, knowledge is power.
Mm-hmm.
And we are in a society that's been dumbed down intentionally
Mm-hmm.
through media, through the kinds of entertainment.
Right.
Not that that's bad, but to allow it to dominate our lives. And I think this is the wake up call, because our lives are being changed and we feel like we have no say.
Mm-hmm.
And it's out of control because we don't know what's happening. Alan, it's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
There is, I have yet to find a single source of information that is not tainted or biased or skewed in some way. I have to look at multiple sources. And as a scientist, I'm lucky in this respect because I have the skills to read obscure scientific journals and to make sense of very technical language. And it's out there. It's not hidden. It's just not on the airport newsstand, and you're not going to see it on CNN or Fox News or MSNBC or PBS. They're not sharing this story.
So what is it going to take for us to just, for that one little example, to start to implement this clean green energy?
Well, I think what it takes is for us to be aware that
Mm-hmm.
this even exists.
Okay.
Myself and other people are bringing that. Here's where I'm coming from, Alan. And I mentioned this earlier.
Mm-hmm.
What we have right now is the assumption that the average person on the street doesn't have the intelligence, the intellect, or the knowledge to make these decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So they're being made for us because of that assumption.
Right.
As we re-engage with knowledge and decision making, and it happens in our schools, it happens in the way we educate our children in our own homes. As we re-engage with that, it empowers us to participate in these decisions and to make our voices known. Ideally, the people that we elect to represent us should reflect those values. Uh, that is under attack right now. That system is under attack right now.
But
And I think this is one of those places where, I used to believe that science and policy and politics could all be kept separate. Then there was a time they were more separate than they are now. But right now, science is being hijacked and cherry picked. Data is cherry picked to leverage the stories that support very specific agendas. And if we are not aware of the fundamental human values, I think I'm going to go back to this. This is the most important thing that we can do. Who has time to read all this stuff? Who has time to research all this? I mean, even I don't, but I do it. I stay up into the wee hours of the morning doing this. So what we can do, it's very easy. As individuals at your family dinner table, with your friends in your community, get together and say, what are the values that we cherish? Maybe we've taken for granted because they were never threatened. But what values do we cherish and are not willing to compromise? And then every decision, every time an election comes up, every time a company asks us to support them, we ask, does this company support these values? Do our elected officials support these values? And if they don't support them. And I think it's one of the most powerful things that we can do. And you don't need anything special to do that, because we all know in our hearts what it is that we cherish is our most basic human values.
we know that, but there is a population that still has, I would say, other values than the ones that we
Oh, I
talk
see.
about.
Yeah, I see. Oh, here. Okay, I see where you're going now. And here's what's happening right now.
Yeah.
There was a time that you and me and you and I have been active in communities that are aware of everything we're saying,
Right.
where a lot of the population has not had the time or the inclination. So there was a time that we could have addressed where we are in the world right now in a way that would have eased a lot of the suffering that we see. But that time has passed. We're in it. We are in it. So here's what I see happening. There are two parallel societies that are emerging, and it's not like one is in one part of the country or
No,
red states or blue states.
It's right next door.
It's in our home. It's at the family dinner table because the
Yes.
kids are thinking different than the parents.
Yes.
It's tearing families apart. So there are two parallel societies that are developing. One of them is all in on everything. They're all in on the tech, all in on surveillance, all in because it gives us a safer world. It makes us feel safer when we travel. They're all in. There's another segment, and that may not even know exactly what's up, Alan, but what they're saying is, wait a minute, something doesn't feel right. And I can't put my finger on what it is quite, because I keep hearing all this stuff out there on Facebook and YouTube and QAnon and all this. I'm not into that, but something doesn't feel right. And what those people are saying is, I'm going to go back to what's true, what's basic in my life, to the fundamentals, and live a little closer to the earth, honor my body a little bit better. And here's what's happening. Those two parallel societies, we're going to live our lives at the same time, but this isn't going to take long, Alan. This isn't going to play out for years. We're going to check each other out. That's what's happening. We're going to look and we're going to say, who is happier? Who's healthier? Who is more fulfilled in their lives and in their relationships? Who has found more joy in the very essence of their existence? And the answer to that question is the answer to what you're saying, because under the weight of the hurt and the suffering that comes from one of those choices, we will gravitate, we will move to the one that answers those questions the best. And that ultimately, I think, it will be what unifies our society. It's very difficult to unify now. We need something to unify us, and I think this is what's going to bring us together.
No, I like that. I hope you're right, because generally what I see are people who are suffering tend to only see suffering, even if they're around people who appear to be happy. There's sort of like a wall around them, but maybe there'll be a breakthrough. of this awakened consciousness, like it is happening, what is the potential for our society? What do you see as we pass over this hump that has been thrown in the road of our evolution? What does it look like when it really, when we come to the other side of that and have an awakened
Well, this is the
consciousness?
thing, Alan. I used to think it was a hump, but it's not. A
Mhm.
hump suggests a speed bump in the road of life. So you go over the speed bump and then you go back to the way things were.
Okay.
We are at a bifurcation, and nobody told us it was happening. And there are people that are still telling us it's not happening.
Mhm.
But you go back into the world, and the world that we used to know no longer exists. Jobs are
Right.
gone,
Right.
businesses are gone, the ways of thinking, lives are gone. We've all lost people,
Mhm.
friends, loved ones, parents. I lost my mom to COVID right at the end of the year,
Right.
it's a sad story that many people are sharing. So this bifurcation, I think, is what is leading to these parallel ways of thinking and living.
Mhm.
It cannot drag out for an extended period of time. It's going to come down pretty quickly. We're going to make these choices and say, man, I want what they have. They're thriving and they're
Mhm.
healthy and they're happy in their lives. That's what it's going to be. I see us moving ultimately, and I'm an optimist
Right.
and I'm also a realist. So realistically, we're in it. We're going to have to go through it. Optimistically, what I see, Alan, is I don't think it's a binary choice. I don't think it's black or white. It's not like accept or reject the technology. I think what we'll find is a common sense, a middle area where we learn to honor these fundamental values of what it means to be human, and then invite the technology to support that in our lives so that our lives will, I think, will be simplified.
Mhm.
I think will be localized. And I think that we will find our relationship to the technology can emerge in a really healthy way.
Mm.
This is the first generation that's had to make this choice. Some people will probably agree more with what I'm going to say than others, but it's something to add to the conversation. there, there's an entire community of individuals whose job, whose professional work it is to counsel people who have been abducted,
Mhm.
in some cases against their will. That's the abduction
Right.
by life forms from other worlds, alien abductions, ET abductions. There are a lot of different languages for it, and I have some good friends in that industry.
Mhm.
And one of the as therapists, and one of the questions that I've asked them, I said, this is a phenomenon. It's a global phenomenon. It's been
Mhm.
happening for decades. It's not just new age.
Right.
As different as they are there common themes, or is there a common theme, a single common theme that you see in all of these cases?
Mhm.
And the therapists I've talked to individually have told me the same thing, and it's relevant to this conversation. So what they say is that when the individuals, the abductees, ask, why me? Why are you interested in me? Why are you interested in us humans? You're obviously more advanced technologically than we are. And what they were told brings this conversation right back front and center, because they say one of two things. They say either we were at the juncture in our evolution where you are right now a long time ago, and we made a choice to follow the path of technology, and we want our biology back. We want the ability to emote, the
Yes.
ability for intimate connection. We are very concise, technologically,
Mhm.
uh, proficient, but we lost this, and we want it back. Or, and this is interesting, some of the cases the therapists I've talked to are working with, they say that the abductions were not by aliens, that they were by us from a future time,
Right.
people traveling in time coming back to the point where we made the choices and warning us, telling us not to make the choices that relinquish the very essence of our humanness.
Mhm.
So taken unto themselves, some people say, I believe it, I don't believe it, whatever. But when you plug that into the big story, it's just another piece that says something rare is happening in our lives, and we're being reminded how precious humanness is. And before we give our humanness away to the technology, I think it behooves us to know who we are so we know what it is that we're giving away.
Right. That's where
the new human story comes in.
That's what my whole book, Making Contact, is about.
I know it is, and that's why I wanted to say it.
Thank you, because Making Contact is about us emerging as a greater being with all the potentials we've mentioned here and more, in order to meet the others that are waiting for us to wake up to those potentials, in order to be part of a bigger community. And yes, there are beings coming to get our emotions, because that is one thing that we really know how to do, is feel. So we'll continue this conversation and talk about the greater story. Yeah.
Well, Alan, the ability to feel, but what they're really interested in is we are the only form of life that we know of on Earth right now with the ability to consciously self-regulate our own biology, to upregulate and downregulate the system, and emotion is one of the tools that allows us to do that. No other form of life on Earth can do it consciously, at will, on demand. That ability is the core of our most ancient and cherished spiritual traditions. And now we are bringing it front and center at a time when we are on the precipice of losing the ability to do that. So,
it's also a part of our civilization, the ability to translate those emotions into creative actions so other people can feel what you're feeling, has evolved us. And I think creativity is the final goal, each of us as creative individuals, to share our feeling self with the rest of humanity is the evolutionary point. But thank you, Gregg, for your insights and your research and your dedication to the work that it's going to take for us to move forward. We're all doing our piece. So
we're doing the best we can, Alan, with what we know to be true. Thank you, Alan Steinfeld, for the opportunity. We'll call this Gregg and Alan part one. Yes. And I look forward to our next. Thank everyone. Thank you for sharing part of your day with us today. Take good care.
Okay, I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Talk to you soon.
All right. For New Realities with Gregg Braden.